You ever walk into a moment so sharp it cuts before you know you're bleeding? That was me, standing on the gravel driveway of a countryside estate, staring up at the glowing windows of a party I wasn't supposed to be at. My car was still cooling behind me, ticking in the summer air. Marley had insisted I stay home. Corporate stuff, boring, full of old guys in ties, she said, laughing it off like the event didn't matter. But here I was, staring at a mansion buzzing with music, champagne glasses catching the light, and a guest list that looked anything but boring. Truth was, I'd been feeling something for a while. That low, steady hum of wrongness in your gut that you try to ignore until it swells into a roar. Marley had changed lately. She used to tell me everything, now she carefully chose her words like they were stones she didn't want to drop. Her smiles lasted a beat too long, her phone was always face down, and she'd started keeping her engagement ring off more often than on. First it was lotion. Then dishwashing. Then just forgot. Tonight I was done pretending I didn't notice. The estate was one of those places you'd rent for a wedding or a movie shoot. There were glowing paper lanterns strung between hedges, jazz echoing out into the warm air, and staff moving like shadows carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres. It should have been magical. Instead, it felt like a stage set, beautiful, hollow, and built for someone else's show. I walked through the front garden and into the crowd. No one stopped me. They assumed I belonged. I guess a tailored blazer and wedding band confidence still buy you silence. And then I saw her. Marley stood near the stage, laughing, tilted slightly toward a man I didn't recognize. He wore a Berg *NY velvet jacket, crisp white shirt unbuttoned just enough to signal arrogance, not charm. His smile curved like he knew exactly who he was and how easy it was to get what he wanted. Marley had one hand resting lightly on her champagne flute, the other brushing a curl behind her ear, eyes locked on his like there was no one else in the room. I stopped walking. Just stood there. It wasn't the laughter. It wasn't the way her knee leaned toward his or the way her head tilted at the exact angle she used to give me when we were alone in crowded rooms. It was the ring. Or lack of it. Her left hand was bare. That was the moment. That stupid, tiny moment where all the pieces lined up and I still wanted to believe I was just overthinking. Maybe she'd taken it off and forgotten. Maybe she left it in her purse. Or maybe I was watching the truth play out in real time and didn't want to admit it. I moved forward before my courage could bleed out. Each step felt like walking deeper into a version of my life I didn't recognize anymore. I passed tables of her coworkers, familiar faces with unfamiliar expressions. Some gave awkward half-smiles. Others quickly looked away. No one said anything. I reached the small stage just as the band rapped a song. Marley turned to take another sip of champagne and saw me. Her face didn't light up. It didn't fall either. It froze. Mid-laugh. Mid-sip. Her eyes widened just enough to reveal the panic she hadn't prepared for. Like someone caught backstage, still changing costumes, before the curtain rose. "Jaden," she said, too loud, too bright. "You made it." The man beside her turned slowly, the corners of his mouth curling into something that wasn't quite a smirk but wasn't anything friendly either. He looked at me like I was a footnote. A memory. He didn't move, didn't offer a handshake. Just rested his arm casually on the cocktail table between them, eyes locked on mine like we both knew exactly what this was. I didn't respond to him. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the small navy blue box. Her ring had been in my drawer for 2 days. I'd noticed it missing from her nightstand and decided not to ask. Just to see what she'd say. When she left that morning, she hadn't worn it. She didn't notice I'd taken it. Now I was giving it back. I held the box out to her. Not with anger. Not with drama. Just placed it gently in her hand. The music stopped. People turned. Voices dropped into hushed nothings. And Marley didn't say a word. She opened the box and stared at the ring like it was radioactive. Her fingers curled tightly around it, but her smile didn't return. "Oh, I took it off this morning. You know, for the presentation. Didn't want to lose it. I meant to put it back on, I swear." Her voice cracked near the end. Just slightly. Enough to sound human, not rehearsed. But it wasn't the words. It was her face. Her posture. Her reaction to seeing me, not surprised, but startled. Startled like someone who hadn't expected the alarm to go off yet. And that look? That told me everything. She hadn't been surprised I came. She'd been afraid I came early. The man in the Berg *NY jacket shifted, and for a split second, I saw it. The look he gave her. Not comforting. Not questioning. It was the look of someone waiting for a script to resume. His eyes flicked from me to her like he was checking to see if the play was still going, if he still had his part to play. And Marley? She didn't meet my gaze. Didn't say thank you. Didn't take my hand. just stood there, clutching the box, ring inside, like it was a live grenade. I turned without another word and walked back through the murmuring crowd, their polite whispers rising like smoke. I didn't stop until I was outside again, the night air cold against my skin despite the warmth of the summer. For a second, I stood under the porch light, hands still tingling from where the box had left. And I thought, this isn't the end. Not yet. But it was the beginning of it. I didn't remember getting in the car. I just found myself sitting behind the wheel, parked under a canopy of trees a few miles from the estate, headlights off, the world outside thick with the hum of crickets and the faint echo of laughter from a life that had just slipped through my fingers. The ring box was gone. My palms were empty. So was the passenger seat. So was I. I didn't start the engine. Couldn't. My fingers hovered over the key, but something inside me wouldn't let them move. My chest felt hollow and crowded at the same time, like my heart had been scooped out and stuffed full of questions. Questions I didn't want to ask because deep down, I already knew the answers. That look, the way she flinched when she saw me, the way his smile curled like punctuation at the end of a sentence I hadn't been ready to read. Marley's eyes weren't confused when I stepped into that room. They were calculating, fearful. She hadn't expected me early, and that's what she was scared of. Not discovery. Timing. My mind rewound like a film reel unraveling. I started thinking about all the moments I'd been too tired or too trusting to examine. The late nights, the early meetings, the client emergencies that always seemed to happen just as we were sitting down to dinner. I had excuses for all of it. Of course she's working late, her job's intense. She's growing. She's successful. And I wanted to believe that so badly, I stopped noticing the things that didn't fit. Like the perfume. She had started wearing this new scent a few months ago. Something sharp, floral, and unfamiliar. I'd complimented her on it the first time, and she'd smiled like she was guilty of something small, something harmless. It's just a sample, she'd said. Don't get used to it. But it never ran out. She wore it often when she left for work. Never at home. I didn't think much of it. Just assumed she wanted to feel professional. Confident. But that wasn't it, was it? She was putting on that scent for someone else. Then there were the showers. Longer. Steamier. The kind where she locked the door and took her phone in with her. I used to knock, playful. Ask if she was drowning in there. She'd laugh, but it never quite reached her eyes when she came out, towel tight around her like armor. Sometimes, when I was half asleep, I'd feel her crawl into bed and turn her back to me. Her side of the mattress stayed cold. That hurt the most. Not the distance, but how quietly it had settled between us. I used to wake up and find her hand resting on my chest, her head on my shoulder, her breath steady and slow beside mine. But lately, it was like sleeping next to a stranger with secrets pressed into the sheets. And her phone, God, her phone. Locked always. That hadn't been a thing before. She used to hand it to me to check directions while driving or read a text when her hands were full. But now, if I even glanced at it, she tilted the screen away like it was a reflex. One night, maybe 3 weeks ago, she left her phone on the kitchen counter and stepped into the garage to grab something. It lit up. A preview from someone saved as just E. The message read, "Still thinking about last night. Can't stop smiling." I stared at it for 3 whole seconds before I heard the door open and turned away. Later, when I asked her who it was, she barely blinked. "Elaine," she said casually. "From my department. We went out for drinks after that long client pitch." I asked what they talked about. She shrugged. "Just work. You know how it is." And I bought it. Because I wanted to. Because the alternative was starting to feel too big to hold. There was also that night, maybe 2 months back, when I called her late after a dinner meeting ran short. I planned to surprise her with takeout, thought we could catch a movie at home. But she didn't answer. Not once. I must have called 4 times. No response. No text. So I drove past her office on the way home. Lights were off. Lot was empty. Her car wasn't there. When she walked in the door an hour later, flushed and breathless, I didn't say anything right away, just asked how work was. She hesitated. Just for a second. Long, she said. We had to move across the street because of a parking problem. Sorry, I didn't check my phone. Battery died. She even showed me the charger plugged into the wall, blinking red like it was proof. But the whole story felt off. That should have been enough. But I talked myself down. She wouldn't lie. Not Marley. She's just tired. Overworked. I'm reading too much into this. But tonight, the way she held that ring like it had come from a ghost. There was no mistaking it anymore. No defense. No rationalizing. The dam had cracked, and now the flood was rising. She was lying to me, and worse, she'd been doing it for a while. I stared at my hands gripping the steering wheel like it could hold me together. My knuckles were white. My jaw ached from clenching. I thought about our first apartment, about how she used to leave me sticky notes with dumb jokes on the bathroom mirror, about how we once got caught in a thunderstorm at the farmer's market and laughed until we couldn't breathe, about our wedding vows, how she cried through hers and how I held her shaking fingers afterward, thinking, God, I'm the luckiest man alive. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat there, silent, frozen, letting the weight of it settle in. This was the part no one prepares you for, the moment the person you've built a life with becomes a stranger. The moment you realize the lies weren't just slips or mistakes. They were chosen, layered, maintained. Every missed call, every guarded glance, every too perfect excuse. It had all been part of something bigger. A story she was writing without me. I reached into the glove box and pulled out the receipt for the GPS tracker I'd bought last week. My fingers brushed the small device hidden in the passenger air vent, a second one just in case. I hadn't installed it yet. I didn't want to believe I'd need it, but I did, because the pieces were falling into place now. And the picture they formed was one I couldn't unsee. I didn't sleep that night. I don't even remember walking into the house. Just that I ended up sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark, elbows on my knees, listening to the rhythmic tick of the wall clock while Marley slept in the next room, peacefully, effortlessly, like nothing in her world had shifted. I watched the light from the hallway spill across the carpet and tried to convince myself I was wrong, that I'd imagined the look, that I was spiraling because I'd caught her at an awkward moment. But even in the silence, my gut kept shouting, no, you saw it. You know, I waited for sunrise. When Marley stirred and shuffled into the bathroom, I listened to the door click shut and quietly made my way downstairs. I didn't say good morning. I didn't ask how she slept. I just left. She didn't text me all day. Didn't call. Maybe she thought she'd weathered the storm. But storms don't pass. They gather. And I'd had enough of pretending I wasn't already in the middle of one. The GPS tracker I'd tucked into her purse earlier that week was still active. She never noticed it. Sleek little thing, smaller than a lipstick, magnetized to the bottom lining. I'd set it up when I first started to suspect something, telling myself I was being paranoid. But paranoia doesn't feel this clean, this precise. That morning, she told me she had a client meeting at a coffee shop on the far side of town. Said it casually while putting on her earrings. I nodded like I believed her, said something dumb like, hope it goes well, then watched her drive off from the upstairs window. 15 minutes later, I was in my car, following the signal. She parked in front of a small cafe just outside the downtown strip. One of those quiet, artsy places with exposed brick, hand-poured lattes, and Wi-Fi passwords written on chalkboards. I stayed across the street in a borrowed contractor's van. Tinted windows. No logos. I traded cars with my buddy Joel for the day, told him I needed something discreet for a surprise anniversary plan. That lie felt easier than the ones I was choking on at home. From the van, I had a perfect line of sight through the front window of the cafe. And there she was, Marley, sitting at a corner table. With him, Berg *NDY jacket guy. The same smirk, the same confidence. And this time, there was no room for interpretation. His hand was on hers. Not accidentally, not innocently, like it had been there a while. She leaned in, brushing his chest with her fingers as she laughed at something he said. Her eyes locked on his, not darting around nervously, not checking for exits or strangers. No guilt, just Comfort. Familiarity. I raised my phone, snapped a photo. I didn't need it, but I took it anyway. I watched them talk, laugh, touch. Watched the way her head tilted, same as it used to tilt for me when she wanted to make a boring story seem an asterisk mate. Watch her tuck her hair behind her ear, the way she always did when she was trying to look sincere. I stayed for 20 minutes. Long enough to erase doubt. Short enough not to lose my mind. Then I drove home. Every red light felt like a blade twisting deeper. She wasn't some overwhelmed wife making a single mistake. She had a second life. And I just witnessed it. At home, I sat on the couch for an hour with the tracker app still open, watching her dot sit motionless at the cafe. She was in no rush to leave him. I wondered how many times this had happened. How many client meetings had ended with their knees touching under cafe tables. Then I opened her laptop. I knew her password. She never changed it, our anniversary date. That fact felt so twisted now I almost laughed. Once inside, I searched through her folders. Most were ordinary presentation decks, billing documents, vacation itineraries from 2 years ago. But one folder stood out. It was named with a string of numbers and letters like something auto-generated or buried on purpose. Inside were over 100 photos. Some were taken in hotel rooms. Some selfies. Some candid *T from bed, like the kind you take when you think no one else will ever see them. The man from the cafe was in almost every one. I clicked through in silence. Her in lingerie I'd never seen. Her wrapped in sheets. Her smiling over wine glasses with city skylines in the background. One photo caught me, her standing at the edge of a hotel bed, naked except for heels. The timestamp said last month. That same night she'd come home late from traffic. I felt sick. This wasn't casual. This wasn't new. They had weekends. Rooms. Memories. Moments that were supposed to be ours. I copied the entire folder to a flash drive. Then I backed it up to cloud storage. Then I locked the laptop, closed it carefully, and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. What was I looking at? A man who'd been played? A fool? A ghost in someone else's life? No. I was looking at a man waking up. I thought about confronting her. Screaming. Throwing the laptop. But that would let her twist it. Let her cry and reframe it as a mistake. A moment of weakness. This wasn't a mistake. It was a campaign. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. My hands shook slightly as I raised it to my lips. My mind was racing but focused. No more guessing. No more denial. I was looking at the truth. Cold. Documented. Undeniable. That night, when Marley came home, I didn't say anything. I didn't ask about her meeting. I didn't look at her when she kissed my cheek. I just nodded, smiled faintly, and said, "Glad it went well." She smiled back, relieved. And that told me everything I needed to know. She still thought I didn't know. But I did. And now? I had every piece of the puzzle. It was time to stop being the one catching up. And start being the one writing the next move. I didn't want revenge. That part always sounds noble until you're the one who's been gutted. But it's true. I didn't want to ruin her. I didn't want some messy blow-up where we screamed at each other and neighbors peeked through the blinds. I didn't want fire. I wanted silence. I wanted truth. And I wanted everyone she'd lied to see her the way I now did with the mask off. That week, I began planning. She had a company event coming up. A mid-quarter innovation summit, whatever that meant. I'd overheard her practicing her presentation in the living room, standing in front of the TV like it was a boardroom full of shareholders. Her voice was crisp, professional, poised. She looked like a woman in control of her life. She was good at that performance. I waited until she left for her gym class one morning and opened her calendar from our synced family account. Thursday, 10 a.m., conference room B reserved under her name. Perfect. But not perfect enough. So I rented a conference room at a hotel downtown. I used a throwaway email account to create fake invites to select members of her team. Subject line, Marley Hart Strategic Leadership Preview Internal Launch. Sent with urgency, buzzwords, and a little flattery. You've been identified as key contributors for early insight. They all bit. Even Marley. I included her under the alias of someone from her own executive wing. That's what made her show up. Authority. Opportunity. Reputation. These were the strings she danced on. The night before the event, I barely slept. Not from nerves. From focus. I printed everything: photos, messages, timestamps. I didn't need to embellish anything. Reality was already damning. I chose 10 images. Just 10. Enough to make denial impossible. A blend of hotel room selfies, one beachside dinner, one where she was sitting on the Berg * and Y-jacket guy's lap, kissing his cheek while he held her waist. Each photo was marked with a red line in the corner: clean, discreet, clinical. I labeled them asset slides. I wanted the room to feel like they were reviewing case files, not gossip. Under every chair, I placed an envelope. Inside each, one photo, the ring box I'd originally returned to her, I had taken it back when she wasn't looking, and a note that read, "Lies are most dangerous when they wear the costume of success. JH." That morning I arrived early. I wore a tailored suit, sharp enough to be invisible among professionals, calm enough not to betray the earthquake under my ribs. The projector screen glowed with her company logo. 10 minutes before the start, people began arriving. One by one, they filed in, chatting casually, laughing, balancing coffee cups and notepads. I stayed near the podium. Some recognized me from past holiday events. They nodded, a few smiled. No one asked questions. Then Marley walked in. She stopped mid-step when she saw me. "Jaden," she said, tilting her head slightly, already trying to reorient her narrative. "What are you?" But then she saw the screen, and the folders on the table, and the room full of faces she couldn't escape. "Why don't you take a seat?" I said, nodding politely. She didn't move. I took the clicker in my hand and started the slideshow. The first image came up with a faint chime, the cafe *T. Her and him. Hands entwined. Eyes locked. There was a breath-sharp collective. Someone shifted in their seat. Someone else coughed. She spun toward the door. "I wouldn't," I said. "Envelope under each chair." They all checked. And one by one, they pulled them out. I didn't speak. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. Each slide clicked forward slowly. A hotel selfie. A nighttime kiss outside a wine bar. A mirror reflection, Marley behind him, her arms wrapped around his bare chest. Each photo landed with the weight of a courtroom gavel. I watched her face. At first, pale disbelief. Then, the frantic inventory of lies, trying to decide which one to use. Finally, the collapse. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. I closed the slideshow after 10 photos. There was no applause. Only stillness. I placed the clicker on the podium. "This isn't retaliation," I said quietly. "This is release. From the lying. From the pretending. From her playing two versions of herself and thinking none of us would notice." I turned to the table. Picked up the ring box. Placed it gently in front of her. "No more second acts," I added. "I'm giving this story an ending." Then I walked out. I didn't wait to see if she cried. I didn't stay to hear if anyone stood up for her, or if she ran, or if she tried to twist it into some performance of victimhood. I left. I walked out of the hotel, into the noise of the city, into a life where I could finally breathe again without the weight of her secrets filling my lungs. I didn't answer her texts that followed. I didn't return her call that night where she left 6 voicemails in 2 hours. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. A note on the kitchen table said, "You didn't have to do that. We could have fixed it." But she didn't write it for me. She wrote it for herself to convince the mirror that she was still someone worth defending. What she never understood is that it wasn't just the affair. It was the manipulation. The quiet cruelty of a person who can look you in the eyes while building an entire second life behind your back. There's no coming back from that. That day, when I stepped outside the hotel and into the sun, it hit me. Not grief. Not anger. Just this strange, settling silence. Like the sound after a storm. Not destruction. Clarity. I thought that would be the end. After the hotel, after the photos, the silence, the sound of that last slide fading into the hush of her career imploding, I thought I'd closed the book. I even told myself I was proud of how I handled it. No yelling. No public meltdown. Just the facts laid out like evidence in a trial she never saw coming. I told myself I'd walk away with my head held high. But some stories don't end when the curtain drops. Some stories have sequels you never asked for, unwritten chapters that show up on your doorstep in the middle of the night. Mine came on a Tuesday. It had been 3 days since the conference. Marley was gone, her clothes, her toothbrush, even the set of keys we always hung by the front door. No note this time. No text. Just a sudden absence that felt more like a surrender than an apology. I'd settled into the stillness of it. I worked. I ate. I went through the motions like someone rebuilding muscle after an accident. Then, around 8 p.m., I heard a knock. Not the kind of knock you expect, 2 sharp taps, not urgent, not friendly. Just deliberate. When I opened the door, she was standing there. Not Marley. Someone else. Hoodie pulled up, black, oversized. Jeans torn at the knees. Her hands were jammed into the front pocket, and for a second, I thought she was some lost teenager asking for directions. Then she said my name. Jaden Hart. I nodded, unsure whether to be defensive or concerned. Yeah. She looked over her shoulder, then back at me. We need to talk. Can I come in? There was something about the way she said it, calm, rehearsed, like she'd done this before. I didn't move at first. I'm not here to hurt you, she added. I'm his sister. The guy from the cafe. The one your wife was seeing. I let that hang in the air for a second, watching her closely. Then I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table, the one Marley and I used to eat pancakes at on Sundays. The girl, woman, really maybe late 20s, kept her hood up. Her eyes scanned the room like someone raised in survival mode. She looked tired, worn down by secrets, like she'd carried something for too long and was finally ready to set it down. I don't expect you to believe me, she started. Most people don't. But you need to know he wasn't just some guy your wife ran into at work or at a bar. I leaned back slowly. So what was he? She looked up. A professional. I frowned. A professional what? She hesitated. Manipulator. Seducer. Plant. He's paid to target people. Specifically, people like you. I stared at her. I know how it sounds, she added. But I'm telling you the truth. Wealthy clients, people in law firms, tech, finance, they hire him to compromise their rivals' families. It's strategic. Get someone like your wife to cheat, document it, destroy your image or your testimony in court, ruin your credibility. My first instinct was disbelief. But disbelief only works when your world isn't already in freefall. Are you saying Marley was part of this? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. At first. But it's more complicated than that. She slid a worn envelope across the table. I opened it. Inside was a thin, typed document. Clean lines. Organized rows. A list of names. Dates. Locations. Fees. My name was near the bottom. Jaden Hart, $25,000. I looked up at her. Someone paid to have me targeted. She nodded. They always do. My brother's good at it. He plays the long game. Works through charm, attention, emotional vulnerability. And he's always paired with someone on the inside, someone like your wife, who's either being manipulated or already agreed. My hands curled slowly into fists on the table. She kept going. I only found out what he did last year. He was supposed to quit. Said he was done. But then your name showed up in one of the files. And when I saw how familiar it looked, how cleanly it fit, I knew he hadn't stopped. So I started watching. I couldn't speak. My breath was short, shallow. Like I was trying to inhale after a punch to the gut. Look, she said, softer now. I don't know who paid for your name. Could have been someone at your job. Could have been a client, a rival. But what I do know is that Marley's involvement wasn't accidental. They don't pick people out of thin air. She was either recruited, or she came into your life with instructions. The edges of the envelope curled under my grip. You're saying Marley was planted? Maybe, she said. Or maybe she started out genuine and got pulled in. But the way she stuck with him, the way she let it drag out, that wasn't normal. And those photos you showed, he doesn't usually get caught like that. I stared at the document again. Jaden Hart, $25,000. Objective, compromise partner. Document infidelity. Destabilize. It read like a business memo. My life reduced to strategy. I looked at her. Why are you telling me this? Because I've seen what happens when no one does, she said. Families get torn apart. People lose everything, careers, custody, reputations. And he keeps getting paid to do it. I couldn't let that keep happening. She slid a small flash drive across the table. There's more on here. Stuff I pulled from his cloud account. I had to use some tools I wasn't proud of, but it's real. All of it. I didn't touch the drive. Not yet. She stood to leave. I know you probably hate both of them right now. That's fair. But be smart, Jaden. This isn't just about cheating. It's bigger than that. I walked her to the door. She paused before stepping out. By the way, he doesn't know I came. And he wouldn't want you to see what's on that drive. Which means whatever you do next, he'll try to stop it. Then she was gone. I stood in the hallway long after the door closed, the envelope in one hand, the flash drive burning a hole in the other. Everything I thought I knew about what had happened, the betrayal, the lies, the affair had just shifted. Marley hadn't just broken a vow. She'd been part of something engineered. And I was never just a husband caught in the crossfire. I was the target. The flash drive changed everything. Inside were call logs, fake IDs, surveillance schedules, and messages between Marley and others using code names. One profile was hers, created 2 years before we even met, with a different name, fake credentials, and a carefully manufactured background. My relationship had been built on a script. I wasn't a husband, I was an assignment. I brought in a trusted friend from my IT days, someone who owed me favors. He dug deeper. Every random friend we'd met together? Planted. The apartment we first toured? Already leased in advance. Marley wasn't supposed to fall in love, she was supposed to monitor and report. The affair was real, yes, but it was only a fracture in something far more elaborate. I was starting to understand that this wasn't just betrayal. It was surveillance. She had activated something buried. That's what the last file revealed. The sister took me to an old radar facility just outside the city, now abandoned, its walls cracked and rusting. Inside was a locked room with a box labeled Heart J. I opened it and saw documents, photos, and transcripts dating back to my childhood. School essays, phone call records, even a drawing I made when I was 12, one that matched a classified military event. How did I know that? I didn't. But someone had noticed. Since then, they'd watched me. Marley was their last piece. I wasn't just cheated on. I'd been studied. All my life, I thought I was choosing. Turns out I was being chosen. And now, with Marley gone and the mask torn off, I wasn't angry. I was awake.